4 years ago today, on October 10th, 2010, TNA held their 6th annual Bound for Glory event live from Daytona Beach, Florida. Of course, Bound for Glory, for those of you that aren't TNA fans, understand it to be the WrestleMania for TNA, basically. And this entire show was built around the tagline 10-10-10 since it took place on October 10th, 2010. And what was the significance of 10-10-10, you ask? It was the formation, the reveal of who would be they, a storyline that TNA had built up months in advance going into this event. And if there's one thing that TNA does right, and there's a lot of things that people give them shit for, and rightfully so sometimes, it's that they can build up a big angle. Sometimes their angles and groups and factions overstay their welcome. Cough, cough, main event mafia, aces and eights, this group that would be revealed on the show, everything along those lines. But nevertheless, so TNA does a good job of building up stuff for their biggest show of the year. God knows at WrestleMania every year, sometimes we usually get a match, a random match, like the middle of a feud or the beginning of a feud that does not end at that doesn't end at WrestleMania. TNA does it a little differently with their main event angles, and in this year of 2010 for TNA, it was all building up to this one show, Bound for Glory, the formation, the reveal of who would be they. And Abyss had started doing after he turned heel that summer, saying that he was bringing they with him, all this other kind of stuff. Sting was saying that there's a conspiracy in TNA, same with D'Angelo De Niro, Kevin Nash, all those kind of guys. They were heels, but they would turn babyface after this, all that kind of stuff. So I was looking forward to what the main event of the show saw for the vacant World Heavyweight Championship after the ex-champion Rob Van Dam had been attacked by Abyss on the ECW show, the whole effing show a couple of months before this on TNA in, I think, August, thus vacating the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. So a triple threat match on the show was to be done to crown a new TNA World Heavyweight Champion, pitting Kurt Angle against Mr. Kennedy, a.k.a. Mr. Anderson, and Jeff Hardy in a triple threat contest. So the match itself, it was very, very good. I did watch this pay-per-view live. This was around the time where I started to stream pay-per-views live. I mean, I hate admitting that, but it's true. This was around that time that I started to watch pay-per-views online and stuff like that. I did not want to miss a show. This is probably the first TNA show I ever saw online live. That's what happened. So I was really looking forward to it. I missed the first hour of the show, but I did catch the final 2 hours, and including the main event matchup. Now, I figured going into the show that someone was going to turn heel, join they, and although it was the culmination of this whole they angle, it was also kind of the start of it too, and it would go on for the next year or two. Basically, the next year, that was when it really climaxed, but they continued it after next year's Bound for Glory anyway. But nevertheless, I figured that someone was going to be turning heel in this match and be revealed as the leader of they. I figured if it wasn't Kurt Angle, who was associated with Sting in the past, part of Main Event Mafia, so he knew a thing or two about lead heel groups, it had to be Mr. Kennedy. But in the end, ended up being Jeff Hardy. Now, let me say before this that I wasn't the biggest Jeff Hardy fan before this night. During his time at WWE, as I've said in every single video I've ever done on this channel, I started watching in April of 2008. So from that time to about a year and a half later when he left the company in September of 2009, I wasn't a huge Jeff Hardy fan. I wasn't a Jeff Hardy detractor, but I wasn't one of his biggest fans. My little brother was, but I wasn't. But even so, though, I was sad to see him go. He was leaving the WWE. I felt a bit betrayed. I mean, I wasn't the biggest Jeff Hardy fan, but being the WWE diehard fan that I was at the time, I felt a bit betrayed when he rejoined TNA, I guess I should say, because he was in the company before, I think from 2003 to 2006, when he joined TNA at the start of 2010 when they did their whole rebranding thing with Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff, and look how that turned out for them. But anyway, I didn't really like the fact that he was in TNA. Nowadays, I mean, if you asked me 2 years ago if I wanted to see him come back to WWE, I would have said I would just rather leave him in TNA. That's where I became a fan of him, and I'll get into details in that in a second. That's what this whole video blog is about. But like I said before, was not the biggest Jeff Hardy fan when he was in WWE. When he rejoined TNA in 2010, didn't really care for the guy. But when he turned heel on this show, I was super shocked. Maybe some people saw it coming. Some people thought it was a dumb move. And in retrospect, maybe it was, considering that Jeff Hardy was the most over guy in the company. He wasn't a TNA original. He wasn't anything like that. He wasn't an AJ Styles or a Bobby Roode who they would build up over the next year as well as a singles competitor. But he was the most over guy that they had. He was moving merch, all that kind of stuff. In the way that they had it play out, and I do watch it back on YouTube to this day because I think it was a very cool reveal. A lot of people might think otherwise. I thought it was really entertaining. I thought it wasn't innovative because, like I said before, it was kind of a retread of what WCW did when Hulk Hogan turned heel in WCW at Bash at the Beach 1996. It was the whole same thing with garbage being thrown into the ring, the NWO, or the new NWO, being revealed to be Immortal, or known as they at the time, and the infamous They're Here line. that was actually spelled Their, I believe, or yeah, I don't know how it was spelled on that sign, but it wasn't spelled THEY''RE. They spelled it wrong on that sign, which was hilarious since it was grammatically incorrect. Kind of sums up TNA in a nutshell, but anyway, though. That whole angle that night, I was marking out like crazy that Jeff Hardy turned heel. I thought it was something new. It got me invested in the character. And like I said, maybe I'm in the minority here, but I really love Jeff Hardy's heel run. And I had someone ask me about this past week on #AskGSM if he should return to WWE as a heel, kind of going back on his heel run in TNA from a couple of years ago. He should go back as a babyface, in my opinion. But I became a fan of Jeff Hardy when he did turn heel, debuting his new Another Me entrance theme performed by himself. I hated Modest. I've liked every other theme he's had since then. Another Me, Resurrected, Similar Creatures, Twist and Fate. I love all those themes. I just hated Modest. But that was when I really started becoming a fan of Jeff Hardy when he turned heel 4 years ago to this very day on 10-10-10 at Bound for Glory. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Was it necessary? Like I said, this is personally speaking. From a business standpoint, it didn't really make sense because he wasn't dying down. He wasn't like the fans weren't turning on him. He was still very much over. But with that being said, though, I thought it was a very cool thing for TNA. It was a breath of fresh air. It was a new chapter for TNA going forward, and I was looking forward to where it would end up in the weeks after this. And it didn't really pan out all that well. His world title run wasn't really all that memorable. He had the personal problems and all that kind of stuff. His run at the top over the next 5-6 months was kind of I don't want to say a failure, but his terrible behavior in terms of the drugs and the alcohol and all that, showing up to Victory Road in the state that he was pretty embarrassing. That kind of put the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, of Jeff Hardy's heel run, because after that he was taken off TV for a number of months, came back as a babyface in late 2011. So that kind of put like I said before, the final nail in the coffin for Jeff Hardy's amazing heel run, in my opinion. Like I said, maybe I'm in the minority here, but I really liked it when he was in TNA for the time that he was as a heel from 2010 to 2011, the whole Antichrist thing. And that's why I don't really want to see him go back to WWE as a heel for a number of reasons. One, for the fact that he was one of the most over fucking guys in the roster from 2008 to 2009, so it would be asinine to bring him back as a heel. Especially since, they're all about moving merch nowadays, and he's a guy that can sell merch, the armbands, the t-shirts, the face paint, all that kind of stuff. But not only that, too, but I think he works better as a babyface. Like I said before, I loved his heel run. People weren't really familiar with Jeff Hardy as a heel in WWE. I don't think he ever worked as a heel in WWE, aside from when he debuted a part of the Brood. But aside from that, he was almost always a babyface, I believe. But even still, though, I don't think it'd work out for the best for that time that it happened, for that time that it lasted. I was a big fan of Jeff Hardy as his heel run. I thought it was very, very good. I was a big fan of it. It wouldn't go in WWE. I'll say that much. The whole Antichrist thing, I thought it was cool. And, the short hair kind of thing, the whole look that he had going on at the time. Not so much the Divas Championship belt that he had at the time in the place of the TNA World title. But I like the whole image of Jeff Hardy at the time, the whole heel run. But like I said before, it wouldn't work well in WWE. For one, that he's over as a motherfucker, as a babyface in WWE. And two, the whole Antichrist thing would definitely not fly by today's WWE's PJ standards and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, even after he came back from his suspension in late 2011, I still remained a fan of Jeff Hardy. I'm still a fan of Jeff Hardy to this day. He's still having great matches on the TNA roster with his brother Matt, who I'm also a big fan of on a personal level, as well as he serves as an inspiration of mine. Anyone who follows me on Twitter or Facebook knows that for a fact. But even still, though, I do look forward to seeing Jeff Hardy back in WWE at some point. Like I said before, had you asked me, maybe, I don't know, a year or two ago, I probably would have said I would rather have Jeff Hardy stay in TNA because that's where he works best. He's more consistent. They treat him right. I mean, they treated him right in WWE, but it was a little too late, in my opinion, in the fact that they pushed him towards the main event not until late 2008 and about late 2009 as well. And it was too late because he was already on his way out. So that being said, though, I always loved his TNA work. I was a big fan of him. That's where I initially became a fan of Jeff Hardy. But absolutely, I think my opinion has changed in the last 2 years, and I do want to see him back in WWE. It's gotten to the point where I'm not only a fan of Jeff Hardy in terms of him just being in TNA. I'm a fan of his as a whole, if that makes any sense. So I do want to see him back in WWE, along with him and Kurt Angle, I think, are two former stars. Like Batista was on that list at one point, RVD, Hulk Hogan, all these guys have since gone back to WWE. I'm very much hoping that Jeff Hardy and Kurt Angle both follow suit. I can only imagine the reaction that Jeff Hardy would get, even all these years later. People might not remember him, but Give them a few weeks. And I hope they don't do the whole vignette thing. I always hate when they build people back up via vignettes and all that kind of stuff, and then that kind of takes away from the surprise. But even so, though, I do look forward to Jeff Hardy being back in WWE at some point, and it just makes me reminisce in the memories of when I initially became a fan of Jeff Hardy 4 years ago today.